Marcus has made a pact with Titania and now serves both the Arcanists and Neverborn. With this change in allegiance comes a shift in playstyle. Marcus now actively mutates the beasts and chimera that he brings into battle, shaping their attacks and abilities to suit his needs. Embracing the mutations given to them, the chimera under Marcus's control have the adaptive evolution ability, allowing them to get a one-time quick buff at the cost of reverting back to their original form and discarding the upgrade. Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video we're going to be going over Marcus's core box, and he brings along the keyword chimera. So Marcus's core box is comprised of Marcus, his totem the Jackalope, the henchman Miranda, and then you also get 3 order initiates. So Marcus himself is a living master with defense 6, willpower 6, move 6, and size 2. On the front of his card for the abilities, we first come across Guided Evolution that states at the start of this model's activation, discard all mutation upgrades attached to it, then this model may attach a mutation upgrade. And after we get done with Marcus's card, I'll go over what the mutation upgrades are because they're a really big part of his kit. Next up is Protected Beast. So after this model is targeted by an enemy attack action, it may discard a card to change the target to a friendly beast model within 2 inches of this model, ignoring range, line of sight, and targeting restrictions. Next up we have Unimpeded. This model is unaffected by severe terrain. He also brings along the ability Accomplice that states after this model ends its activation, a friendly model within 6 inches that has not activated this turn may discard a card or pass token to do so. We also have the Beastmaster ability that states, if this model is this crew's leader, when hiring, crews containing this model treat beasts in their declared faction as though they were versatile. Then finally we have Primal Domain. Once per activation, after a friendly model within 6 inches discards a mutation upgrade, you draw a card, and Marcus clocks in at 12 health. When we get to the actions on the back of his card, his only attack action is called Tear Apart. It's got a range of 1 inch. It's a melee attack, has a stat 6 resistance against defense. The target suffers 2/3/5 damage, and then has a ram trigger for Tear Off a Bite that states this model heals 2, and then the Pouncing Strike trigger on masks, which states place this model into base contact with another enemy model within 5 inches and line of sight. Then take this action again, targeting that enemy model. So aside from the front of Marcus's card, he's got a lot of business here on the tactical actions on the backside. So the first one is Chimerancy. That's range 12, stat 7, and has a variable TN. This action cannot target the same model more than once per activation. The TN of this action is 10 plus the upgrade's cost and the cost of every other mutation upgrade attached to the target, and you can only target other friendly beast or chimera models. You attach a mutation upgrade to the target, and on a ram trigger, you heal 2 with the Mend, and then for masks, you get quick reflexes. That states, take this action again, targeting a different model. We also have Call of the Wild, friendly beast only, 6 inches, stat 6 with an inbuilt ram, and TN of 12. The target may move any number of inches up to its move, and then with that inbuilt ram trigger, you can get Hunter's Call. That states when resolving, instead of moving, the target may take the charge action. The final tactical action on Marcus's card is Primal Roar. This is a pulse of 6, has a stat of 6 with a mask built in, and then has a TN of 11. Friendly beast and chimera models within range may move up to 3 inches. The mask trigger is Evolutionary Superiority. That states when resolving, increase the distance each model may move by a number of inches equal to the number of mutation upgrades it has attached. There's also a tome trigger for Surge that just lets you draw a card. And I think I forgot to state, but this is his bonus action. So before I can unpack what Marcus is really about, I wanted to take a moment to go over the mutation upgrades because they are really what he's mostly built around. So there are 5 different mutation upgrades, and they all are plentiful too, so you are able to only have 2 of them on the table at a time. And the first one here is going to be Armored Plates. This is cost 2 and gives the model armor +1 and then the ability Hunker Down that states, at the end of this model's activation, if it did not move during its activation, it gains shielded +2. Next up is Feathered Wings. This is cost 1 and gives the model a couple of different abilities here. So first you get Flight. You also get the ability Quick, which just gives you +1 move, and then you get the ever popular Butterfly Jump that states after resolving an enemy attack action targeting this model may move up to 3 inches. Next up, we get Formidable Horns. This is also a 1-cost upgrade that gives the model the ability Charge Through, that states this model's melee attack actions that are generated by a charge action receive a positive to their damage flip. This model's attack actions gain the following trigger. Onslaught on a Masks, take this action again, targeting the same model. Now we have another 2-cost upgrade called Natural Camouflage. This gives the model the Disguised ability that states they can't be targeted by a charge action, they can't be the target of actions generated by charge actions. And then there's also the ability Stealth that states enemy models cannot target this model from more than 6 inches away. The final mutation upgrade for the Chimera keyword is going to be Serrated Teeth and Claws. This comes in at 2 points or 2 soul stones as well, and gives the model the ability Blood in the Air. Enemy models damaged by this model's melee attack actions gain Adversary Beast. This model's melee actions gain the following trigger. On a ram, you get Puncture, which states when resolving the action's damage flip, you receive a positive for each ram in the final duel total, up to a maximum of 2. So Marcus is definitely kind of like your enabler master. He wants to kind of dictate and control the actions of his crew, and when you have a bunch of beasts, you can do quite a bit with him when you've got Primal Roar and Call of the Wild being able to move your models to get into a better position or extend threat to allow them to get these really ridiculous charges off, especially when that charge is outside of their action with Call of the Wild. Now, Chimerancy is one of the key features of Marcus's game plan, so every single one of these 5 upgrades ends up modifying some kind of aspect of a beast, right? And the Flight one can make it so that you're a little bit hard to pin down, you can get into really difficult spots, and you can get there faster. Being able to get Flight, that +1 inch to move, and if your opponent, and like Butterfly Jump kind of de-incentivizes your opponent from coming after you, because if they do hit you, you just get to jump away anyhow, and you're not really pinned down by them. And then Serrated Teeth and Claws can take a model that they can be kind of both support and punchy. If you have the rams to get things to work, or if you're putting this on a Soulstone user that can add those rams into the total, then they're able to get some extra damage across and also enable adversary for the rest of your crew as well. Because with Marcus, I feel like you're not going to be taking many options that are outside of the beast keyword. You really want to be able to maximize everything he can do with them. Formidable Horns is something that can make your beasts a little bit more punchy on the charge, and being able to get that onslaught trigger to get even more attacks out of them just really puts that beast into an extremely offensive position. And you also have armored plates to kind of give you a little bit more durability, especially when we look at models that might be using Pouncing Strike to get around or Leap to get around. Those aren't considered moves at all. So if you use those abilities to hip hop around the table, then you get the shielded at the end of your turn. And with that armor +1, it's very difficult to get rid of you. And if you're looking at your list and saying, or your opponent's list rather, and saying, I need a way to be able to get to the middle of the table or start to connect with my opponent, because sometimes when you're playing these melee focused crews and somebody might be playing a real backfield crew that can really hit you from range, it can be difficult to kind of close that gap to start doing work. But Natural Camouflage not only makes it so you can try and present yourself a little further forward and stop your opponent from charging you, but you also, well, they don't stop you from charging, but at least make the charge worse, right? But additionally, that camouflage makes it so your opponent really can't shoot you down. So some of your beasts in general are not, they don't have a whole lot of like inbuilt defensive tech. So having natural camouflage on there works really well. In terms of where Marcus likes to be on the table, I think he likes to be close-ish to his beast, but kind of behind them so that he can kind of conduct their activities without being too much in the mix. He does have Protected Beast and Unimpeded, so he can get to where he needs to get to without having to worry about like terrain slowing him down. And Protected Beast allows him to get a little bit more in the mix and take the hits that he wants to take, and he could easily chunk those off to a model that has like armored plates on it, or if he has armored plates himself, he can choose whether he wants to, suck that up if he's got the shielded on him, or cast it off to someone else. The guided evolution allows him to be extremely flexible with himself too. I think that that's kind of one of the big overarching things with Marcus is flexibility and adaptability. In terms of like funky stuff on his card, most of his stuff is pretty straightforward, but sometimes Chimerancy or the math on Chimerancy can get a little bit strange. Essentially, you take the number 10 and then you add the upgrade cost of every other upgrade mutation on the target. So if I had like Formidable Horns and Flight on a model, then I would take 10 plus the 2 plus the 1, so it's 13, and then that would be the target number. But then the stat is 7, so I would need like a 6 to get that to go off. So it can get a little mathy if you're stacking a bunch of upgrades on other models, but Chimerancy's math isn't really all that difficult. You just have to really pay attention to what you're doing there. Essentially, though, in those early turns, especially turn 1, it's not likely for me to ever have Marcus move on turn 1 because I'll be too busy trying to get as many Chimerancy actions out of him as possible. I might move him up forward, do my Primal Roar to get things into position, and then try and take 4 Chimerancy actions with the quick reflexes. I'll take my 1, the triggered one, and then another one and a triggered one. And that's a pretty good early turn for Marcus. You just kind of assess what your opponent has and then start stacking upgrades that will start to give them a hard time. Before we get too much further into Marcus's core box, I wanted to touch on Primal Domain. This is the one where after a friendly model within 6 discards a mutation upgrade, you can draw a card. It's worth noting that that includes Marcus whenever his guided evolution goes off at the start of his activation, so you're able to always kind of get some card draw off of him. And then the adaptive evolution ability that's on some of the models that we're going to be talking about also counts for that discarding upgrade. So if you need to get some extra combat push or make sure an action happens and you're within 6 of Marcus, you can at least get a card drawn out of that, and it just helps kind of keep his engine rolling a little bit. All right, the next model we'll look at is Marcus's totem, the Enforcer Jackalope. It is a 4-cost Enforcer with defense 4, willpower 3, move 4, and size 1. It has the ability Lamarckian Evolution. This model receives +1 to its final duel totals for each mutation upgrade it has attached. It also has Demise Eternal that states once per turn after this model is killed, you may discard a card. If you do so, it heals 4. It also has the Insignificant ability that means that it can't take any interact actions and is ignored for strategies and schemes. It is unimpeded, so it's unaffected by severe terrain. We also have the Creature of Caernabog. When this model would discard a card for its Demise ability, it may instead discard a mutation upgrade. If it does so, it may ignore the ability's once per turn restriction. When we get to the back of his card, we've just got 2 actions listed on here. The attack action is Horns. It's at a 0-inch range, stat 4, defense resistance. The target suffers 2/3 damage. Then there's a ram trigger for Tear Off the Bite to heal 2 points to the model. And then the Pouncing Strike trigger on masks that states place this model into base contact with another enemy model within 5 and line of sight. Then take this action again, targeting that enemy model. For his bonus action in the tactical section, we get Leap. It's a range 6, stat 3 with an inbuilt mask, and a target number of 10 with a mask. You place this model anywhere within range. So the Jackalope itself, at face value, doesn't look like much, but when we're able to start stacking up the upgrades on him, not only does that turn him into a much more dangerous model, increasing all of those stats on final duel totals for him, but we also, with all these upgrades, start enabling him to be demised quite frequently. So if this allows you to kind of play a little bit further forward with Marcus, because if you've got the Jackalope next to him, you can kind of threaten with your big beasts and then have the Jackalope and Marcus just sitting there stacking upgrades, and a allowing him to use the protected ability to go to the Jackalope, and if it's a big hit, the Jackalope just goes into the demise mode, and then you just pitch a card or pitch an upgrade off of him, and he can keep coming back. Sometimes I would prefer to discard the cards in my hand other than the upgrades, but again, that will trigger Marcus's draw card for pitching an upgrade. But keeping his stats high as a late game cleanup model seems to work out pretty well for him. This is another model that's a good candidate for armored plates because that leap on the tactical action isn't a move, so that once he leaps, he'll be able to get shielded +2, and with protected, that turns him into a pretty good sponge for damage that might be coming at Marcus. So Marcus's henchman in this box comes in at 9 soul stones, and that's going to be Miranda. She is a living chimera model, so not a beast, but she has defense 6, willpower 6, move 6, and is size 2. She's got a really small front side of the card with 9 health and the ability Huntress that states friendly chimera models within 3, including herself, receive a positive on defense duels. She is also unimpeded, so like the rest are unaffected by severe terrain, and then has the accomplice ability that states after this model ends its activation, a friendly model within 6 that has not activated this turn may discard a card or pass token to do so. Looking at the back of her card is where a lot more of the business is. I mean, like, I can't say Huntress is big deal here because a lot of Marcus's models, they're not squishy by any means. They're typically supported by a lot of health and maybe a few defensive modifiers, but then you've got your upgrades to help keep you safe. But Huntress is a really big deal for her, so she wants to kind of hug around a lot of these beasts and try and keep them happy. And that does play out in some of her abilities here. But we'll start off with her attack action, and that's going to be Venomous Strike. It's a 1-inch melee range with stat 6 resistance on defense. The target suffers 2/3/4 damage and gains poison +1. There are a few ways in the Chimera keyword to take advantage of poison, but it's not something that you really want to lean super into. It's more of it's a cool that it's there type of thing, but not a overarching theme for the whole keyword itself. In her tactical actions, we get the first one being Primal Flame. This is targeting beasts only. The target heals 1/3/4, and the target receives a positive to this healing flip for each mutation upgrade it has attached. There's a Tomes trigger for Flames of Change that states the target may discard an upgrade to attach a different upgrade to themselves. Or mutation upgrade specifically. So Primal Flame is a massive thing for her. Marcus's beasts have a pretty hefty health pool, and they're typically going to have upgrades on them. Like I said, on the first turn, it's not unlikely for me to get anywhere from 4 to 6 upgrades out right away, and that's excluding something like the Order Initiates that start out with one right away. So, getting a positive to this type of healing flip is pretty gross when that drop or when the kick up from weak to moderate is another 2 points. So healing 1/3/4 is really harsh. And there's no limiter on targeting for this, so you can do this twice to a model and heal them up to 8 wounds if you're getting really lucky. I had a Slate Ridge Mauler once. I think it was in our last, one of our more recent battle reports, where that Slate Ridge Mauler was sitting at something like 2 health, and I had cracked Primal Flame on it twice and healed it for 6. And that is quite debilitating for your opponent to have to fight through all these upgrades on top of all this massive healing. So it's one of the reasons why Miranda really likes to be close by to those beasts to help support them. Next, she has Call of the Wild. Speaking of support, it's range 6. This is the same thing Marcus has. It's range 6, stat 6, TN 12. It doesn't have the built-in ram, but you get to move a friendly beast up to its move in inches. And then it has the ram trigger still for Hunter's Call that says instead of moving them, you can charge. So if you happen to have a low ram in your hand and you want to try and free up Marcus's business to try and get a beast to charge off, Miranda can make sure that happens with Call of the Wild. Needing a 6 of rams to make this happen is not that demanding. She does have 2 tactical action or 2 bonus actions, and the first one's going to be Aspects of the Wild. You discard a mutation upgrade if available, and then, or if able, and then attach a mutation upgrade to this model. So again, if you're near Marcus, this will let you get an extra card, and then you can kind of change what upgrade you have on you to help the situation that you happen to be in. You know, maybe Miranda's gotten into the mix and natural camouflage isn't going to be that helpful for her anymore, so maybe you put something like armored plates on her so that she can take the hit a little bit better. Or the next bonus action, this kind of feeds into the next bonus action, but if you're getting ready to turn Miranda into a beast, you can pitch the upgrade that helped her get up to the table and then attach an upgrade that will help the beast that she turns into a little bit more. And with that, the other bonus action that she has is called Beast Shape. It's stat nothing, or range nothing, stat 6 with a TN of 12. You choose an Enforcer Beast or Minion Beast from this crew's declared faction with lower cost than this model. Replace that model, or replace this model with the chosen model without discarding any upgrades, and then attach the bestial form upgrade to the new model. It has the ram trigger for Mend Self that states the target new, or the new model heals 1-3 damage. So Miranda is an extremely intriguing piece for Marcus's crew. She has support written all over her forehead. She's got the Huntress ability. She's got Accomplice if she needs to try and, you know, you really need that Saber-Tooth Cerberus to do a ton of damage, but he's really hurting, and you can't choose whether you want to activate Miranda to heal him up or activate the Cerberus to do work before he dies. With Accomplice, you don't have to do that. You can go ahead and say, I'm going to activate Miranda and do what I need to do here, and then pitch my pass token or discard a card to get that Saber-Tooth Cerberus to go, so now I can heal him up and do the damage that he needs to do. And, you know, you go down in activation, but whatever, you're able to get the work done that you need to. And that Accomplice, being that it's in two different places in this army with Marcus and Miranda, is extremely helpful. It's a amazing ability to have. If we think about things like Accomplice being on models that both have Call of the Wild, they can send a beast off to charge, and then if that beast is still within 6 inches, then you can go ahead and activate them, so they're able to just really take a lot of tempo advantage in the game with that ability there. With Beast Shape, though, this allows Miranda to do the work that she needs to do in the early parts of the game, supporting, and then in the late parts of the game healing, or mid parts of the game healing. And then when you get to that part at the end where you've kind of lost maybe a few models and you need to get more work done, she can shapeshift into a different beast and just do a bunch more work. Your opponent might have been like, oh, well, I'm done dealing with all these big beasts, so no big deal there. I just got Miranda hanging around and whatever. She's just a support character. But then she turns into a Slate Ridge Mauler, and then your opponent's real sad. So overall, I think Miranda's a quite amazing piece for Marcus's kit, and she'll probably find her way into most all of your Marcus lists. So Marcus does come with 3 different minions in his box, and they are living beasts. For 6 soul stones, we get the Order Initiates. Now, one of the things I like the most about these is that they are representative of the different upgrades that are out there. So it's just a nice little nod to the upgrades representing, or the models, like evolutionary adaptations being represented through those upgrades and the model's physical appearance. It's just cool. So for those 6 soul stones, we get a defense 5, willpower 5, move 5, size 2 model. They have the adaptive evolution ability. Now, I alluded to this a little bit before, but this is the first time we're seeing the ability. After this model declares an action, it may choose an attached mutation upgrade to receive a positive and any suit to that action's duel. After resolving the action, you discard the chosen upgrade. So if you're within the 6-inch bubble of Marcus, every time you do this, you're making sure that an action happens and you get any triggers that you might want off of it, and then you're also going to be drawing a card off of that. So this is not bad when you feel like the upgrade they have isn't going to be really useful anymore, or you don't think they're going to be living much longer. You can just get at least a card out of it and maybe an extra bump in damage. They also have the Stampede ability that states, after this model ends a charge action in base contact with any other models, it may suffer 1 damage, and if it does so, all models in base contact with this model suffer 1 damage as well. Stampede's just a good ability to have. Making sure you can guarantee at least a damage is nice. It can kind of turn most of their charge attacks into a +1 damage thing, so that's kind of the way I frame it. We also have Aspect of the Beast, and this is a really cool part of them, that after this model's deployed, it may attach a mutation upgrade. So right away when they start the game, they're already getting the upgrade that you want on them. Typically, you'll find me putting something like the feathered wings on these models because they're going to typically play the role of my scheme runners most of the time, and just being able to get up to move 6 with flight and butterfly jump is really helpful for them. They are also unimpeded, so you don't need the feathered wings in order to make sure that you're ignoring like severe terrain, but if you're trying to get over like obstructions and stuff, it's probably not bad there. They do have 7 health, and that kind of rounds out the front of their card, so pretty decent stats overall and lots of interesting abilities. But when we get to the back of their card, they're a little bit more bare bones. They have one attack action called Sharp Claws, which is range 1 for melee, stat 6, resistance on defense. The target suffers 2, 3, 4 damage. And then you have the ram trigger for tear off a bite for the model healing 2. And then a new trigger that triggers off on masks called Chimera Strike. When resolving, the target suffers +1 damage for every 2 mutation upgrades attached to this model, or friendly models within 2, up to a maximum of 2. So if you're clumping up, and well, I'd call it bricking up or bubbling up as some Malifaux players seem to call it, if you have multiple models around and you're kind of doing like this tag team deal to kind of chase down a particular piece of prey, using Chimera Strike with the model mode will turn you into a 3, 4, 5 damage, and then if you've got Stampede on top of that, it gets even more intense. But with them starting out with an upgrade, it's not all too uncommon for you to have that second upgrade on them if you want them to play more of an active role. Something like giving them formidable horns or serrated teeth and claws to get them to be a little more punchy. Then Chimera Strike can turn them into some pretty damaging things. And then remember, adaptive evolution exists so that you can pitch one of those upgrades to give yourself a positive and build in that Chimera Strike trigger if you absolutely need it to go off. So when I need to use adaptive evolution, it's typically going to be for Chimera Strike on this model. They also have a couple tactical actions. The first one is Call of the Wild. This is stat 6 or range 6, stat 5, TN of 12. The friendly beast only can move may move a number of inches up to its move. So this is the same thing we saw in Miranda and Marcus, but they just don't have the Hunter's Call trigger. So it's crazy to say because it's kind of really what Marcus is all about, but this adds an additional piece of adaptability and flexibility to his list. The Order Initiate can be extremely aggressive, extremely schemy, or it can be extremely supportive to the rest of the unit and being able to get things into the place they need to get to. They also have the bonus action Aspects of Wild that just states you discard a mutation upgrade if able and attach a mutation upgrade to this model. So Aspects of Wild, if you happen to be pitching all of your upgrades, Aspect of Wild allows you to get an upgrade if you don't have one, because you don't have to. It says you pitch the upgrade if able, but if you don't have one, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. At least that's my interpretation of how that works. So overall, I think that the Order Initiate is a pretty strong minion. I was very happy to see that there was a March 2020 errata, and I know this is like, way in the past, but I'm newish to Malifaux in this iteration, but seeing that these were 6 cost instead of 7 made me extremely happy. At 7 cost, these felt like they might have been too expensive, but at 6 cost, they feel like they really do what they need to, and I definitely don't see myself. I always have at least one of these in my crews when I'm building Marcus, but I can definitely see instances where I might want 2 of these as well. They're just a really solid minion for him and do everything that they lean into Marcus's kit really well. So when it comes to ways to expand on the Marcus keyword, he kind of feels like a pseudo summoner in that you want multiple things because he is extremely adaptive and enjoys having the flexibility of multiple different models to hire from. Now, I'm not trying to be biased when I say this, and honestly, it's not really biased. Marcus is the perfect master for me because he is Neverborn and Arcanist, and that's really where I find myself split in my Malifaux alignment, I guess. And I really feel like he's a little bit more geared towards playing well in Arcanist than he is Neverborn. And the reason being is that the beasts that he has access to and the upgrades that he has access to seem to benefit him a little bit more on the Arcanist side than the Neverborn side. So without cracking that can of worms too much further. Different purchases you want to go for with Marcus are going to be maybe the Primal Fury box, because you're going to get some really important beasts in there. Kojo is a 10 Soulstone beast that does a ton of work. It just Kojo feels like one of these things where you need to throw it up as this big beater, but I've found that Kojo does a lot of work running around in the back, not just doing scheming with having marked territory, but also being able to harass these smaller scheme runners or support pieces that your opponent happens to bring. And with Hunter's Call and Pouncing Strike, or Kojo's version of Pouncing Strike, I can't remember exactly what it is, but the one that triggers on, no, I think it might be Pouncing Strike. It's either him or Ferdinand has a different one, but beside the point, Kojo is really good for the list, and the Sabertooth Cerberus is a beat stick of a model. Oftentimes I find Miranda turning into this because Deadly Pursuit can help you do a lot more in the end game, and it just is a really punchy beast. In the early parts of the game, you'll definitely want to see yourself going more for the Slate Ridge box. The Mole Men are pretty decent models in terms of running schemes, and they're fairly cheap at 4 Soulstones and can get around the table quite easily. You also have the weird tunneling shenanigans they can get up to, so if you want to try and put stuff into weird places, the Mole Men puzzle might be something you'd be interested in. But the big one out of here are going to be the 2 Slate Ridge Maulers. They're hard to wound models that are min 3 beaters with a range 2 melee attack, and that's a big deal because Marcus already extends threat so much, so having a piece that can rocket forward, bury into your opponent, and then have hard to wound with maybe armor on top of it makes it so that they're going to have a really difficult time dislodging this piece. Meanwhile, you're just kind of setting up the rest of your beasts in the back line to kind of send them in wave after wave and putting pressure on your opponent in so many places where they aren't able to focus down on these beasts to get them taken off the table. So overall, I've found the Chimera keyword to be a really fun one to play in. Most of my wargaming experience is in War Machine, and Marcus feels like he kind of harkens back to this War Machine style of play where he is the main player of the crew and is dictating what the rest of his crew does. He's buffing them in different ways, shooting them off into different directions. Marcus is the enabler for his crew that will lead you to your victory, right? So he doesn't feel like he has to have all these different models that synergize in weird ways. They all kind of turn into their own beater packages or things that are specifically geared towards doing the job they want to do, and he just really turns all that on. I think that he is a really great I almost said caster, a really great master to start out with if you're looking at either getting into Neverborn or Arcanists. His keyword can get a little rough to pick up, not like Sandeep difficult, but you've got Razor Spine Rattlers sitting in the Neverborn category. You've got the weird, there's a couple other ones in Neverborn, like the Rougarou and stuff like that, or the Boltungan. But the reason why I like Marcus more on the Arcanist side is probably mostly because of Soulstone Cache and the Scorpius, but that's those are some other models. I mean, Ferdinand's in there too and he's a pretty awesome model. I just think there's so many cool things that you can do with Marcus, and every time you sit down to play a game, you're able to get into this reactive play style. So if that's something you value, being able to react to what your opponent's bringing, then Marcus really is the master for you. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of the Chimera keyword or the Chimera core box for Marcus. And if you have any suggestions, or if there's something that I might not be hitting because there's, certain things that Malifaux players are wanting that, since I'm kind of getting my feet wet back in the game, I might not be extremely cognizant of, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. I really want to try and make sure that my videos not only serve to be somewhat entertaining and informative, but just really an overall service to the community in general. I think that Weird's doing a lot of great work with their game right now, and all of the work that they've put in through the 3rd edition of Malifaux really comes through with models like this, where when I put Marcus on the table, I really can feel what it is he's trying to do in this narrative sense. It's one of the reasons why I've liked Malifaux so much for its narrative elements, because you don't need to have this narrative mode for the game in order to feel like you're involved in the narrative. There's just a lot of those story points come through in the game, and Marcus is no exception to that.